Yo, it's Chills back at you with another video. I previously wrapped up a video on Alex Kidd in Miracle World for the SEGA Master System, a pleasant yet challenging 2D platforming game released back in 1986. After finishing up that game, I decided to take a look at what was next on my list of SEGA games lined up on my SEGA Journey. I wanted to make sure I would cover as many games as I wished to play, and that made me notice the really small things, specifically how the SEGA Genesis collection on Steam had many games listed that are sequels to games not released on the SEGA Genesis, Alex Kidd being one of them. That made me realize that there was actually a direct sequel of a game released before Alex Kidd. I guess there goes the whole timeline sort of thing, the whole chronological release thing. Space Harrier 2 released in 1988 for the Mega Drive. I forgot Space Harrier 1, didn't I? We'll get back to that one. Space Harrier released in arcades in 1985 and got a lot of ports later on down the line. I will be playing the Sega Ages re-release on Nintendo Switch alongside the use of a Sega Saturn Pro Controller from Retrobit right there in an attempt to replicate the Sega Saturn playing experience as much as possible. However, this bad boy right here was how people played it back in the day. And as someone born way ahead of those times, I genuinely wish there was more accessibility to these old machines from back in the day and arcades as a whole. I would love to try these old games out. Yes, I'm looking at you, Samba de Amigo. That being said, it was originally released on a motion simulator cabinet. Really cool stuff. It's also one of the first 16-bit arcade releases, and for a game in 1985, holy cannoli, this game looks insane. I'm not even kidding, no cap. From the high-scrolling pseudo 3D scaling on the ground below, to the way the enemies move from the background to the foreground, it's just so mesmerizing on paper. But with the high speed and action of this game, it truly makes the experience a thrill, I'm not gonna cap. The game also just pops with color, and all the sprites have enough detail to be distinct and memorable from one another. You can truly feel that you're moving at fast paces, traversing different environments, and it's enough to not even just take away from the core gameplay itself, which is super simple actually. You play as this character, bluntly named Harrier, as you soar around with a jet-propelled beam cannon. You're constantly running and soaring through 18 unique levels as you fire oncoming enemies and obstacles in your way. At the end of most stages, you encounter a boss that needs to be taken down. This game screams arcade experience, yet it feels unlike anything I've played when it comes to shoot 'em up. It's essentially a rail shooter, yes. However, I feel like there's so much player expression when it comes to how to weave through obstacles and taking down enemies, especially with the character movement. Not only can your character move around the screen, but has a decent range of movement left and right of what you can see on screen. There's a lot of room to breathe with where you're navigating through these levels. The game generally starts you off with 3 lives, and an extra life is granted at 5 million points. Losing all your lives grants a game over, and you're given the chance to continue if you got the spare change, or in my case, whatever change the game had already given you. There are many distinct level themes that I can remember off the top of my head. One, of course, the first one being mood. This is what I think of every time Space Harrier is mentioned. From the luscious pink skies, to the small rocks, to the weak as hell enemies, this is the perfect level for warming up the player to the controls, even if that meant chafing my thumbs. The second level hits, and the atmosphere transitions so smoothly into this desert-like setting, with distinct moai enemies and tall, dried bushes and columns. Enemies begin acting a lot more aggressively over the course of the game, and obstacles start becoming indestructible as well, straight up, pressuring the player to clear as much as possible on screen to make room for survival. I distinctly love these levels, starting from level 4, where a ceiling drops from the top of the screen, and there's a focus on instinctively weaving through these weird alien-like orbs, if you can even call them that alternate between the ceiling and the floor, and you also have to make sure to shoot the robots coming from the side to once again make that breathing room. I just think that it's so fun to watch people especially go through that part because there's just so many moving parts. It's insane. The end of the 4th level introduces these crazy robot enemies that you have to avoid. Now, these aren't exactly the craziest variant, however, later on there are these different colored ones, and specifically, these red ones can be just ballistic as all hell, and I hate them so much. They can go die in a hole. They can go die in the loogie pit for all I care. Aside from your typical shooter levels, there are a couple bonus levels that let you hop on this dragon named Uriah and fly around smashing into obstacles and scoring extra points before your next level. These are a fantastic way to give the player a break between levels. And I really mean fantastic, because I won't lie, after several levels of just non-stop mashing, and not even just mashing, like that D-pad on the Saturn controller, as nice as it is, as you know, it's probably one of the best D-pads I've ever used. It's definitely got a groove in the center that I like to put my thumb on, and that can really start shaving down your thumb. So these levels are definitely a good change of pace, a good break from the norm, I would say. Considering there's no real mashing, there's no real difficulty in these levels. These are all just for racking up points. There are unique bosses for the end of most levels. Despite how unique each boss seems for the most part, the majority are either waiting for projectiles to shoot out and punishing openings, or simply moving Harrier in circles and constantly shooting the bosses, regardless of their measly difficulty. I think it's awesome that you're incentivized to take down these bosses for points, especially since you're on a timer to take them down. Otherwise, the game will move you on to the next level. It is an arcade game after all, so it's got to keep you on your toes no matter what. And it's also the type of game to flex your high scores with friends. The music of this game, while there is little to note of, is once again that Sega brilliance kicking back in, with Hiroshi Kawaguchi as the main composer. He'd go on to eventually create music for the driving game Outrun, as well as the now popular rhythm game My My. Freaking love My My so much. In this game, nothing beats the iconic main theme. Okay, except maybe the results theme and ending themes, though they're just a tad short to be number one. The sound design is also extremely well made, especially the sound of shooting your laser cannon, the sound bosses make when they fire at you, and the words from those damn robot enemies. And of course, easily the most iconic sound in this game, and maybe in most 80s and 90s gamers' minds.
Welcome to the fantasy zone. Get ready.
The 18th and final stage of this game is actually a boss rush of every named boss in the game. Normally after that it ends at the title screen. However, the original Space Harrier actually never got this final boss here named Hayao on the final arcade release. And I'm glad to say it's here to stay in the Sega Ages port of Space Harrier, and it feels like a fantastic way to end such a peak arcade experience, I won't lie. I do find it kind of strange that a game from this time doesn't have an infinite game loop like most arcade games I've played from this era. Specifically how games like Pac-Man just went on forever, even though there's an end, 256 levels. Yeah, no, Space Harrier is just 18 levels, and once you beat the final boss, that's it, the end. But I'm kind of glad this adventure has a start and an end to it. It can definitely tighten up the leaderboard, and prevent players from reaching extremely unattainable scores for others. The Sega Ages port on Nintendo Switch, they need to put these on PC, offers a few features similar to the Alex Kidd port, including save and load states, online leaderboards, you got your custom wallpapers, your filters, and even an extra easy mode. Overall, this is a fantastic game on its own and worth checking out for every Sega fan. Now, this game definitely has its own kind of aura going on. I can tell this is definitely a game that is extremely ahead of its time. Like 1985, when you got arcade game looking like this, it's just crazy to me. And sounding like this too. A masterclass in design and all around just a solid romp for any gamer, as was intended. Definitely check it out. I'm Chills. Thank you so much for watching. And with that being said, Squad-a-la, we out.